Good morning. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to Creations by Gwili. I'm Gwili, and this is my last live of the year. We hope to go to Alabama next week and visit with family, so I will pick up again probably the second week in January, and we may do things a little bit different, but we'll talk about that later. But for my last video, I wanted to show y'all how to make some really cute Christmas trees made out of fringe. I think probably all of you know what fringe is. My husband said I might have to explain what fringe is, but you don't usually have to do that for women. But you can buy it at Hobby Lobby by the yard, and I have a couple of examples. This particular tree could be made with any type of fringe, ribbon, material, fabric. I did one with fabric, buttons even. But what I'm going to show you today is this fringe that I got from Hobby Lobby. And I just thought it was so pretty and antique-y and vintage. It was a little bit expensive, but I used my 40% off coupon for it because I didn't know how much it was going to take. I believe it's going to take about 1.5 yards. That's what I figured out. But today things are a little bit different. Thank you for joining us this morning. When you hop on, let us know you're here, where you're from. If you're a first-time viewer, let us know that. Ed is trying to catch some of the comments, and I will always go back after the live and read your comments and answer any questions that you have. Okay, so today we're going to try something I've never done before. Normally I try to prep my stuff ahead of time, but for this particular project I wanted to actually show you how to get the scrapbook paper on your board. So what I'm going to be using is this pretty scrapbook paper from Hobby Lobby. It's got snowmen on it, and the snow is a beige color kind of, so it matched my fringe perfectly. And then I picked up this plaque basically. I don't know if you can tell on the camera, but it actually has like 3 different layers. So there's an area that I've already painted here that's raised, and then I painted the outside. On camera it probably looks gray, but it's really almost the exact same color blue as it's in the snowman scarf, and I thought that would look pretty. And then I just went over it a little bit with whitewash, but I'm gonna have to decoupage it on here and it dry before we can continue on. So I'm going to do that first before I show you some different options for this particular tree. Now when you have, normally you could just take your board, put your scrapbook paper down, turn it over and trace around it. But since this is raised, I'm going to show you a different way to handle that. So like I said, you probably can't see, but it's about probably an 8 by 10 in the center of this plaque. So what I'm going to do to kind of get my marks is I'm going to lay my scrapbook paper on it and flatten it out. And then I'm just going to go, I'm going to make sure it's straight at the bottom and the side. And then I'm just going to go through and find the little ridge and just push on it.
It's routed.
Really? Is that what it's called? It's routed? I just know there's like several layers where it goes higher. Raised edges. So I'm going to push on that, and it should make an indentation for my scrapbook paper. And then I'll just cut just a little bit outside the indentation to get the size I need. I hope the weather's great where y'all are. We actually had a few days of really cold weather, but yesterday and today I think it's going to be beautiful. It was, you know, back up in the 70s. I would rather it be colder. Okay, can you see here the little indentation that it made? So I'm just going to take my scissors and cut just a little outside that indentation, and then we'll use some sandpaper. So I have to lay it down a certain angle to be able to see it. Of course, since I'm not cutting exactly on the line, you don't have to worry too much about getting it exact. Because we're going to take some sandpaper and get the extra. Now, if your frame has, like this one does not have any kind of way to hang it yet or anything, I probably will put it on an easel or by my fireplace. But make sure that you double check the back, because you want to make sure your scrapbook paper is going in the right direction. So, okay, that looks pretty good. So I'm going to put Mod Podge on it, and my thing of Mod Podge is almost empty. So I'm just going to kind of pour a little bit on. You don't want to put too much Mod Podge, but you want enough that it's going to stick to your board. If you put too much, then your paper gets wet, and then you could tear your paper. You also don't want those little thick things in there. I did paint white underneath it, because when you're Mod Podging with paper, if your underneath coat is a light color, it makes the colors in your paper pop.
Judy Smith said she's in Tampa, Florida, and they had frost this morning.
Oh, wow.
And the home heater's running.
That's probably the cold front we had this last weekend. We had a couple of days that we had to run the heater. But we're in southeast Texas. We're about an hour southeast, I guess, of Houston.
Southwest.
We're southwest? Yeah, I guess. I am directionally challenged. I tell Ed all the time, don't tell me turn east, west, south, north. Tell me turn right or left. Kind of drives him crazy sometimes. Okay, I'm just going to make sure I have a good coat on there. You could do this the way I've done napkins, is let it dry and then iron this on. But I'm not going to do that. All right, I'm going to get my edge at the bottom. And just push it on there good. Make sure it's straight. You don't want any bubbles. As I said, I painted the bottom, and then I put a little bit of sandpaper over it, because you want a good smooth surface. All right, you also can buy this little plastic thing it came with the Mod Podge, and I just use these cheap brushes to put my Mod Podge on. I rinse them out, use them a couple of times, and then I just throw them away. All right, but when you're trying to get the bubbles out, you want to like start in the middle and gently push to the edge. That will get any bubble that's in the paper. You don't want to just keep pushing really hard, because if you put down too much Mod Podge, if your paper gets wet, you could tear it. But just lightly go from the center out. And I'm going to have to put some more Mod Podge there. And my tree's going to cover the majority of this anyway. But I needed to do this first before we can go to the next step. And let it dry. Okay, if y'all have any questions, just put them in there and Ed will read them to me, or else I'll catch them after the live. I prefer to do my lives with him watching the questions and the comments and stuff, and that way I can concentrate on the craft. I just don't want to keep y'all here, you know, forever, just yakking. Okay. Now, I didn't bring a bag in here, but when you're painting or Mod Podging, if you just put your brush in a Ziploc bag until you can get to the sink and wash it out, I just have a paper towel here. It'll be fine. I may need to use it again, so we'll leave it here. Okay, so what I'm going to need to do is set this aside. Now, a lot of people put a layer of Mod Podge on top of their scrapbook paper. Personally, I don't like the way that looks. maybe it's just me and I don't know the correct way of doing it, but it always seems to, I see lines in it and it has a film. If I was selling this, this is for me, put in my living room. If I was selling this, I would probably let this dry at least 30, 45 minutes. And then I would take it outside and spray it with the Rust-Oleum Clear, non-yellowing semi-gloss that I use for everything, just to coat it. You also could take the Minwax paste.
Smell says she likes watching you yap it.
Watching what?
You yap it.
Well, my husband and I have different opinions of the whole video thing. I don't want my head shown. And the other day, of course, he thinks that you ought to be able to see all of me, but I would much rather do this with the camera up high and just you seeing my hands. But anyway, he doesn't think that's good, and he's the one videoing. So, but to start with, we'd go back and look at it, and I'm like, you still can see my head. I don't want to see my head. And I don't like to listen to myself. I hardly ever go back and watch the actual replay. I'll catch the comments and stuff. But anyway, I'm not going to seal this with anything because I think it'll be fine. But I'm going to set it aside and let it dry. While it's drying, I want to show you a couple that I played with and was practicing with. I made one for my daughter that I'm going to give to her later this week. But you can use so many things. This is just an 8x10 board. I forgot where I got it, but you can buy them in probably Hobby Lobby. But I took it and I used what they call the chippy paint, and we may do that next year. But you just paint something, let it dry, and then you take Vaseline and just put it on in different places. And then you paint over the top of it. And then when you take your rag or a paper towel and wipe it off, the places where you've put the Vaseline, that paint won't stick. And it gives it a very old, chippy looking look because it looks like the paint is chipping off. But anyway, this is with a cheaper, just fringe that I practiced with this one. And it's not perfect. I mean, you can still see little pieces. But when you use fringe like this, you pretty much have to put a little bit of glue when you cut it because it will unravel. But I did this one for her. And I like it because it will either sit or you can put hooks on the back if you want to hang it on the wall. This fringe was only like $1.99 a yard. And I thought that turned out really cute. And then I thought, well, let me do one with fabric.
Paula Ranky says hi.
Hey, Paula. Glad you caught me live. This is the last live of the year.
Yeah, her and Hope on.
I hope. So this one is actually done on a canvas. And I'm just taking it loose to show you. It's just slipped in that frame. And it's done with 2 different fabrics. Now this one I actually, because I didn't want the fabric just laying on the, I don't know where I'm supposed to put it. I didn't want the fabric just laying.
Yeah.
So I actually cut out the tree with cardboard. And then I glued the fabric and wrapped it around the edge of the cardboard where the edges were covered. And then I put this on here. The frame is just a really cheap dollar store frame that I took and painted black. And then I did a little bit of a dry brush white on it. Now, I did make sure that my tree was okay in here, top and bottom. When I went to put Merry Christmas and use my stencil, I did not put it in the frame. So you'll see that part of my S when you put it in the frame. But this is just a little cheap canvas. You can buy them even at the Dollar Tree or Hobby Lobby, of course. And then you just put it in any frame you want to. And you have to make sure these little things are all the way up or it won't go down in there. But when I put it down in there and put it by my fireplace, it's not perfect because I cut off part of my Christmas. But there again, I was just playing to see what the fabric would look like. You also could take this fabric and use like your a real heavy thread or the dental floss and take the piece of fabric and run a stitch through it and then gather it and do gathers. And that would look really cute too. But I mean, this is, you just use canvas, you can use a board, you can use whatever. Today we're going to use this fringe that I found at Hobby Lobby. Now, it was a little expensive. I think it was like almost $7 a yard, but I